Bernard Madoff went to jail for his stupendous financial con. His eldest son, Mark, has gone to oblivion, having hung himself from a dog leash on the second anniversary of his father's outing as perpetrator of a $20 billion con. Let us grieve a while for a 47-year-old father of two who dramatically killed himself during this so-called season of joy. Mark Madoff had no angel Clarence, as George Bailey had in It's a Wonderful Life, to show him that his financial reversals did not make him worthless, that he had a loving family that depended on him. Mark's family was his tormentor. One doesn't know the extent of Mark's complicity in his father's fraud. The sons insist they knew nothing of it. Mark and his brother ran the legitimate trading arm of the Madoff business, which was separate from the father's crooked investment scheme, who had carried 9-year-old Ron Nevaeh's body out of the home. When the person from the fire department testified and said he retrieved the body of Ron Nevaeh O'Neill from the home, and all he could do was sob, it took every ounce I had not to start sobbing too, because there's no way any person with any feeling could have witnessed or seen the photos of what occurred that night and not be haunted for the rest of your life, the judge said. I know I will be. For the rest of my life, I will be haunted by what I saw as far as the evidence, and just the abject cruelty of it all. Cisco focused much of her attention on the details surrounding Ron Nevaeh's death. Prosecutors said O'Neill used a hatchet to kill his daughter, who was unable to speak and was born with disabilities. She couldn't scream. She couldn't run away. She witnessed what you did to her mother, Cisco said, addressing O'Neill directly in the courtroom. She knew, and the horror that that child suffered, and she already had a life where she was born with challenges regarding her physical and her mental disabilities. But the pain and suffering that she suffered that night at your hands, unspeakable. The judge became visibly emotional as she described the moment of the little girl's death. The sons reportedly haven't spoken with either parent since the scandal broke open. Before his death, a family spokesman said that Mark remains unalterably bitter about his father's deception and the injury his father has caused. Whatever the case, a desire for revenge also must have driven Mark's carefully timed self-destruction. It is often said that suicide is anger turned 180 degrees. Mark may have wanted to exact the ultimate pain on his father. Sadly, one can't be sure that Bernie Madoff had feelings to be hurt. Mark's brother, Andrew, on the other hand, had been toughened up by his struggle with lymphoma. He had confronted a far more formidable foe than the loss of fortune and face. A discussion of betrayal, illness, and death must include the tragedy of Elizabeth Edwards. She did not die unexpectedly. Her aggressive breast cancer had been spreading. But one can imagine that the tabloid coverage of her husband's crude infidelities had made her last days especially miserable. Like Madoff, former North Carolina Senator John Edwards double-dealt both inside and outside his family circle. He pursued his sloppy affair as thousands were putting their money, sweat, and faith into his campaign for president. Suppose he had become the Democratic nominee, and then the vulgar details emerged. Making the Edwards story tawdrier still was his use of Elizabeth's illness during the campaign to portray their troubled marriage as a romantic fairy tale. Elizabeth has said that she knew about the affair during the campaign, which made her complicit in the charade. Was it family loyalty of a complicated political kind? One thing is clear. She handled her physical and emotional pain with enormous grace. Back at the Madoff drama, the victims are seeking restitution from the sons and their children as well. The Nantucket house that Mark and his wife bought for $6.5 million shortly before Bernie's arrest is on the market. But the sorrow caused by treachery is never all about money. Mark's college buddies had put their savings into the crooked Madoff investments, so these friends are gone. Mark had been trying without success to get another job. No one would touch him, and he was said to be distraught over suggestions that he was part of the fraud. While Andrew's chief interests had moved to a foundation involved in lymphoma research, Mark was made the face of the Madoff enterprises. When some questioned the source of the enormous returns on Madoff investments, Mark was given the job of publicly defending the company. We may never learn all he knew, but there is little doubt that his father used him, Like other Madoff victims, Mark lost money. Unlike them, he suffered the cruelest form of betrayal. He was his father's saddest victim. At the moment, that first time you struck her with that hatchet, and little Ronnie testified all he could see was tears coming out of his sister's face. At that moment, that child knew. She knew she was being betrayed in the cruelest, most tragic and sorrowful way that a child could ever be betrayed. She was being betrayed by her parent, the one person that should be there to protect their children and love them and keep them from harm, Cisco said, her voice tinged with anger. And that was the last thing that child felt before she passed on. From this earth was your utter, cruel betrayal to her. She then handed down her sentence, issuing 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole for the 2 murder charges and the 1 attempted murder charge. She then sentenced O'Neal to 30 years for arson and 30 years for each of the 2 aggravated child abuse charges, for a total of 90 years on top of the life sentences. Before deciding whether to approve the recommended sentence set by the jury, the judge denied a motion filed on O'Neal's behalf requesting a new trial. O'Neal claimed he was denied the ability to testify in court.
The motion was drafted by the defense attorney assigned to O'Neal for the penalty phase of his trial. O'Neal represented himself in court during his trial, at times yelling at jurors as he crafted the defense strategy against disturbing evidence and witness testimony. An appointed public defender helping in closing arguments asked jurors to spare O'Neal and instead send him to prison for life. During the sentencing file, a psychologist testified that O'Neal was diagnosed with PTSD and delusional disorder. O'Neal's mother, who wanted to protect her identity, also told the jury about a random drive-by shooting that nearly took O'Neal's life just months before the murders. At least one juror did decide against the death penalty. However, in Florida, jurors must be unanimous in their decision to recommend the death penalty.